Sound design is what makes music production fun, right? It might even be the reason that you decide to get into it in the first place. It's that element that separates just from learning a traditional instrument to opening this world of sound that you can explore. But when you start to learn sound design, it can be really overwhelming and pretty frustrating just because it's so confusing. You don't know what everything does. When I started out, I spent hours just aimlessly staring at the synths and the plugins and the software and the sounds I was using, trying to figure out how it all worked, and I just couldn't figure it out. Looking back, I had no process of learning it. I was just opening it up and hoping for the best, really. If I did have a framework for it, it definitely would have sped things up and helped me to learn things more effectively, faster, and with more of a practical element to those things. What's up guys, it's Aiden with EDM Prod, and today we're gonna show you how you can get started with sound design by using this 3 R's technique that we've come up with. Now, firstly, if you don't know what sound design is, basically here's how Wikipedia defines it. Sound design is the art and practice of creating soundtracks for a variety of needs. It involves specifying, acquiring, or creating auditory elements using audio production techniques and tools. Now, this definition is pretty general and doesn't really relate it back specifically to electronic music production. So here's how I like to define it. Sound design is the technical and creative process of creating sounds through synthesis, recording, sampling, and/or manipulating. It's a very broad process with many different elements, but those are the main 4. Here's what each of them means. Synthesis, the process of creating sound from oscillators and waveforms. Recording, the process of capturing acoustic sounds. Sampling, the process of using existing audio to create new sounds. And manipulating, the process of taking a sound from a source and processing it with effects and other devices to alter it. Now, sound design may just be one part of electronic music production, but it is a very broad and multifaceted art form. So we know what sound design is, but how do we learn it? This is the point where most producers get lost. You know, most people get by watching a couple of tutorials and messing around, but it's really slow and doesn't really get the results that they want. What you really need is a plan based on deliberate action and practice, not just one that gets you the head knowledge like reading manuals and watching tutorials. So after playing around with sound design and learning it for many years, here's what I've come up with in order to help you learn sound design the best way possible. Let's get into the 3 R's. The first of the 3 is Renovate. Now, this stage should come first before all the others. This helps you to dip your feet in without overwhelming yourself. You don't actually have to make anything from scratch, because what we're going to do here is we're going to use the existing resources we've got and use those to help us understand how people have already gone about what's already been created. Basically, we're going to load up some presets and we're going to tweak them to see how they sound. Now, before we get into that, most people try and read the manual as the first way to learn sound design. And while this isn't necessarily a bad technique, it doesn't really relate back to getting actual skills. It just gets you a lot of head knowledge, which still requires you to put things into action. That being said, the manual is a good resource and we will get into it a bit later in this video. So what we're going to do here is we're going to load up an instance of Serum just for the purposes of this tutorial, but you can do this with any synth, or it's also beyond synthesis. You can do it with sounds. Just apply these principles to what we're doing here. So what we want to do is load up the preset browser. Now in Serum, you've got these options to select ratings. I recommend using this or a similar feature in whatever synth or software you're using, just to be able to save your favorite patches pretty much. Basically what you want to do is load up a patch. Now, if you don't have any patches that you like after going through and listening to a lot, I'd recommend downloading some from online somewhere of a specific style that you like, so you can know how to create the sounds that you want to create. Let's deconstruct this one here. So what you want to do here is just play some notes, whether on your MIDI keyboard or your computer keyboard. Hear how it sounds on different octaves and play around with the sound, and then start to navigate your way around the preset, and just take a look at which effects are happening. what filters have been applied, what oscillators are being used. If it's not in a synthesizer, maybe use an EQ spectrum to kind of highlight what sounds are being used or what frequencies are being taken up by the sound and when they are coming in and out. That kind of thing. So you can see here, for example, it's got distortion to get that really gritty sound, especially on the lower notes. And you can add more in with this knob. Oh, okay. Basically, once you've tweaked it a bit, basically you want to go ahead and save your own version to your computer. Once you've done this once, the idea is to keep repeating it so that you can learn new things every single time and apply it to the next one, save a new version, until you've got your own bank of edited sounds that you can not only use, but also have learned so much from through the process of manipulating what other people have already done and from learning the techniques they've used already. After that, you can move on to the second R, which is recreate. Once you've seen how other sounds are made in your software or hardware, what you want to do is you want to use those techniques and skills that you've learned and start to not just edit to the presets that are there, but have one open side by side and start to recreate them like that. What this does is it doesn't just help you understand what's going on, you do get a bit deeper into it, which is better once you've already kind of dipped your toe in with renovating the other sounds. But here you are now practically creating something from scratch, which helps you understand every element in a practical way along the sound design process so that you have a more comprehensive understanding of what's actually going on. Now, hold off on the tutorials yet. Don't jump into that kind of thing. Still stick within your software. We'll get into that next one. But for now, what you want to do is start with a sound in your DAW that you've got loaded up, then create a second instance of Serum and load that up too. Have them then side by side, and you might want to scale down the displays a bit depending on how much space you've got. Essentially what you want to do is start to look at exactly how the sound's been made. So start, for example, with the basic part of the sound, like the oscillator. We may go into the wavetables and see exactly where it is. Phase verb. And then see exactly kind of where it is. And you want to try and get as close as you can possibly to the sound. If you can't, then that's fine. Just try your best. And you want to, okay, so they're using this filter, the LBH24. And they're at this setting that much. And basically you'll want to continue to do this until you've got the entire sound down pat. You can learn everything simply by just copying it and doing it like that. And then you can also differentiate certain elements of the sound as you go, as you get more knowledge. This is where you start to get into your own creativity. And by the end of this stage, you're essentially, what you want to do is slowly reduce that reliance on the original patch and start to recreate sounds by ear. Once you know certain techniques, you'll be able to just, oh, okay, that's a filter. I'm going to just use a filter, and you'll know exactly what sonic elements to apply to the sound design process until you'll be basically creating any sound you hear from scratch. This can take a while, but after constant repeating of this process, using it on different sounds, having fun, you'll eventually get to that point. Then we move on to the last R. The last R is research. Now you might be thinking, oh, come on, Aiden, research? Why would I have to do that? Well, in this case, research means finally taking things into your own hands. From all the skills that you've gained by actually following the last two processes. Now, research does have two parts to it, so you do want to do both of these in order to get the best results. The first is knowledge. Yes, here's the part where you can finally delve into those YouTube tutorials. Now you might be thinking, why the heck have you left this to last? Like most people would start by watching YouTube tutorials and stuff like that. The reason is because I've seen too many producers fall into the trap of watching YouTube tutorials and never actually getting around to making any sounds. I've done it myself, and I know that most people will just watch them and think that they know how to make certain sounds without actually gaining the skills. So to gain the skills, you need to have the practical experience. Then what you can do is use this knowledge section to fill in any of those gaps. Essentially what you're doing is using all the information available to be able to make your sound design as top-notch as possible. So this can involve watching YouTube videos on sound design for a specific type of sound, or tutorials on a specific type of synthesis. You could read a book on sound design. You could read an article on sound design. Any resources that are out there are basically fair game. Now, while you're learning these things, you'll have a greater understanding of how sound design works. You'll be able to understand the intricacies of all the elements, and you'll be able to put them into practice a lot easier than someone who's watching things for the first time and just hoping for the best. But now, a good scientist knows how to use both primary data, which is data that they've generated themselves, and secondary data, which is data that is from other sources. Now, we've just gained knowledge from other sources, but here's the second part of the research phase: experiment. This is where you get to do your own thing. You get to try creating your own sounds, but in a completely experimental way. You get to use the knowledge you've acquired through the last 2 steps, and now you get to use this information to create new sounds, and also just completely throw your ideas of sound design out the window and try new things that you might not have even thought of. There's an old saying that says, if you want to break the rules, you have to know what they are first. So now you know exactly what to do. Why not try something completely different? You'll be a lot more creative knowing what most people are trying and how to not basically do that. So there's no real methodology to this experimentation phase, but there's a couple of things you can do. You can try creating a certain type of sound with the purpose of making it different along the way. Sometimes you can just tweak random knobs. Sometimes you might just have a certain idea that pops into your head and you might see how it sounds. Maybe I want to modulate an LFO with another LFO and then have that modulating another source. I wonder what that would sound like. Experimentation is the last phase of this entire process because it helps define your sound as a producer. Sound design, as I said earlier, is one very important part of production, and it really does contribute to the overall sound that you achieve. And this last phase is super important for that. The sounds you create are very important, and they do help you stand out from the crowd. Now that we've gone over this whole process, here are a few notes just to be careful of. Now, I would recommend following those 3 steps in order. That being said, there are times where you do just have to jump between. This framework is designed to help you rather than to hinder your production. So make sure to use it only for the benefit of you. If you do need to go check the manual out while you're doing something, that's fine. If you just aren't understanding an element and you need to watch a YouTube video, that's fine. You can jump around a bit. The idea is that it's just a general order so that you understand the most effective way, the most fast way, and the most practical way to learn sound design. And lastly, remember that there's more to sound design than just making bass growls. I know a lot of dubstep or bass music producers really like to get into sound design because they can make some crazy sounds, but it does expand beyond there. It's from those chill textured pads all the way up to those bass designs and everything else in between. So make sure you learn sound design in a way that you would like to. And remember that most tools can help you achieve the sounds you want to. You don't even necessarily need heaps of effects or even external synths. A lot of the sound design techniques you want to achieve can be done within your DAW a lot of the time. Now, if you want these 3 R's in a PDF format, something you can stick on your studio wall to remember as you're going through your sound design journey, hit the link in the description or up in the corner there, and you'll be able to access a free sheet to chuck on your wall. Make sure to comment any other tips that we may have missed for learning sound design, anything that's helped you on your journey. And if you did find this video helpful, that you actually got something out of it, please subscribe for more content and give it a like. And also remember to always share it with someone if you got something out of it so that you can share the knowledge. All right, thanks guys. This has been Aiden from EDM Prod. Hopefully you have a good weekend. Peace guys.